All right, guys, NFL Week 5 is here. I'm going to give you guys the must-sits. Guys, you got to be aware of starting this week because they've got a tough matchup versus position. That being said, if you have a starter that's been consistent, you do not sit your starter. You start your starter that has been consistent. But I want to make you guys aware of the players that have tough matches this week so you can make executive decisions if you're torn between two players. Do I start this guy or this guy? I can't make a decision. This is going to help you guys make that decision because I'm going to tell you who's got it in good, who's got it in tough. Now, if you want to listen to all of the guys that had it in good, the must-starts, go listen to an episode I did yesterday, okay? Go back and listen to it. If you're on Spotify, if you're on YouTube, go back a video. Go to my channel, go back a video, and watch that, okay, guys? So, must-starts was done yesterday. We're going to do the must-sits at each position today. Okay, guys, I'm going to cover that here for you, get you guys prepared for starts and sits NFL Week 5. I can't believe we're 5 weeks in right now. It's been crazy. Now, yesterday's game was crazy as well. We're going to talk a little bit about that, talk a little bit about some news, and I'm telling you guys, this is going to be a huge week no matter where you are in your rankings, okay? If you're 0-4, 4-0, it doesn't matter. You need to win. This episode is going to help you. Now, before I do, guys, you want to write down this code. I got my trusty pen here. The code is FFC20, all right? A lot of good games, weekends here. I'm excited. Canadian Thanksgiving is here. Listen, during the games, all right, guys, I order wings. The code you want to use is FFC20, Hooters.com right now. Head on over there, Hooters.com, or download the app. Save $10 on order of 30 or more on takeout or delivery, guys. Go to Hooters, go type it on the website, go browse their food, and upon checkout, use code FFC20. Save $10 on order of 30 or more on takeout or delivery, guys, on the website now in select states. All right, guys? Go do that right now. All right, FFC20 is the code. Secondly, guys, I want you guys to play a game here and guess with me on over or under, more or less here. Saquon Barkley, guys, before we get into the show. Over, more or less than 76.5. And Dylan, over or under 53.5. Rushing yards, that is, all right? This is called Prize Picks, guys. A fun way to play DFS. You take 2, 3, 4, or 5 players, predict if they get more or less than their projection here, and win. It's that easy. PrizePicks.com. The code you want to use there, guys, very simple. DFS Lion. Donald Frank Sam. DFS for Daily Fantasy Sports. Lion. DFS Lion. PrizePicks.com. They'll double your first deposit up to $100. Go try it, guys. Super fun to play. I've left a link here below on YouTube. All right, let's start here, guys, with the quarterback position. All right, let's start with the quarterback position. I'm going to talk about the guys that have it in tough. So, quarterback. A lot of people are excited to start Kenny Pickett. I have him stashed in one league. I'm trying to decide whether I want to start him this week. Last week, had 15 points through an interception. And I'm telling you guys, when you're looking at quarterbacks, try to start that consistent quarterback. Oh, yeah, going back to yesterday's game, let's talk about it. Terrible game. Russell Wilson was the guy I was high on, so I take full ownership on this. And I said that he'd be a viable starter. Even the Broncos believed in him. Right? They paid him, $200 bazillion, right? It was crazy. So you look at him, 2 interceptions yesterday. Matt Ryan, 2 interceptions yesterday. It was absolutely disgusting. I think Russell Wilson had a 54.86 passer rating. I mean, absolutely terrible. Couldn't win the game. I heard Hamler was wide open in the end zone at the end of the game. Just terrible game when you're talking a guy that should be a consistent quarterback. Even Matt Ryan as a backup in one of my leagues should be a consistent quarterback, just wasn't, It is what it is. I mean, there's not much you could do about that. But again, Russell Wilson not looking like a shell of himself going into into the season. It's been absolutely terrible. But either way, let's talk about the quarterbacks for this week. I got to tell you, man, if you got a consistent quarterback that's been consistent the past 4 weeks, start him no matter what. But the guys that got it in tough, Kenny Pickett, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson. Now, you don't sit Lamar Jackson, but he does have it in a little bit tougher versus Cincinnati. Matt Stafford, Daniel Jones, Trevor Lawrence, Geno Smith, and Marcus Mariota. Okay, guys, all these guys have the top 10 matchups versus position. So you need to be aware of that, guys, all right? Trevor Lawrence, been pretty solid, right? Last 3 weeks, but last week had an 11-point game playing Houston secondary. They've been pretty good against quarterbacks. Marcus Mariota versus Tampa Bay. I mean, not a lot of people are starting Marcus Mariota, but you need to be aware that he does have a relatively tough matchup versus position, all right? Kyler Murray, I mean, how do you sit him? I mean, he hasn't been that consistent anyway. 9, 11, and 13 points the last 3 games. Hasn't been that consistent, has it in tough. So if you have a better option than Kyler Murray, you might want to consider it. But those are your guys right there. Again, Kenny Pickett is the guy to watch this week simply because he came in now. And I think that the Steelers' offense has been struggling a little bit. They obviously have. And I think that's because of Mitch Trubisky. And finally, Kenny gets the start. Could be a bright spot in that offense, all right? So quarterbacks, again, those are the guys with tough matchups. Make a decision, guys, all right? If you got a better quarterback, go for him. Like Herbert, I don't care who he's playing. I'm starting him, all right, guys? Start your consistent players. That's what you got to look at is consistency going into week 5. All right, running back position here. Let's talk about it. Guys that have it in tough, Zeke Elliott, right? Coming off a 10-point game. He's going to be safe with 10 to 15 attempt floor, maybe getting all that rushing touchdown, goal line work, right? He may get that. He's a safe guy, but he's got it in tough versus the Rams rush defense. Christian McCaffrey coming off a big week. Been solid the past 3 weeks. Safe, solid. If he stays healthy, he's good. But he's got the second hardest matchup for his position. I'm not saying sit him. I'm saying that he's got a tough matchup for his position. Just be aware. Tyler Algier, the shiny new toy in Atlanta. I like him. I have him stashed, right? I lost Javonte in one league. I had Tyler Algier on my bench in a deeper league where you can have like you can start 4 running backs. I'm going to go ahead and start Tyler Algier. If you have a better option, go ahead and do that. They got Caleb Huntley there as well. Both these guys had 10 attempts last week. Tyler Algier did more with them. I think he averaged 8.4 yards per carry, something like that. Huntley, I think, had the touchdown. Either way, guys, they got a tough matchup versus position. Third hardest versus position versus Tampa Bay. Be aware of that. Brees the Beast has it in tough this week versus Miami's rush defense. He's been pretty solid. I'm not sitting him. He gets it done in the receiving game as well. Be aware of that. Rashad Penny coming off a monster week, has it in tough, dealing with a shoulder problem. He was limited in practice, not sure if he's going to play or what's going on. Kenneth Walker as well was dealing with a shoulder soreness. Both these guys have it in tough versus position. Be aware of that. Najee Harris, a guy that I still have to start in one league. I mean, he's been playing like absolute garbage. Got it in tough versus Buffalo's rush defense this week. If you have a better option, go for it. What do you do with Najee? A lot of people asking me. I think Kenny Pickett's going to help him. More checkdowns, more receptions, because he wasn't, one of the biggest problems is he wasn't getting the receptions that he was last year. He's not getting them. So he's got it in tough this week. Be aware, okay? Cam Akers versus Dallas's defense got it in tough as well. Be aware of that. And Uncle Lenny. Lenny's got it tough. 11th hardest matchup versus position versus Atlanta. Those are the guys that got it in tough. Derrick Henry. He's got the 12th hardest matchup versus position as well versus Washington's rush defense. Do I sit Derrick Henry? Sorry, 13th hardest versus position. So he's kind of in the mid-pack. Do I sit Derrick Henry? Absolutely not. I don't sit Derrick Henry, even though he's got a relatively tough position. Saquon Barkley, mid-range matchup as well. So Derrick Henry, mid-range matchup. Saquon Barkley, mid-range matchup. You don't sit them, okay? You don't. So those are the guys that have it in tough. Oh, yeah, Jamal Williams, fifth hardest matchup versus position. I think Swift is missing time. Tough matchup for Jamal Williams coming off a monster game. Do I sit him versus New England's rush defense? No, because, again, running backs are very slim, but you need to be aware that these guys have tough matchups. Same with J.K. Dobbins coming off a big week versus Cincinnati's rush defense. Got it in tough, coming off a big week, but if you don't have another option, you go for it. But you need to be aware that Christian McCaffrey this week, Breece Hall, Zeke Elliott, Jamal Williams, Rashad Penny, Najee Harris, Cam Akers all have tough matchups versus position. So it's up to you guys to make an executive decision. Again, go watch the must-start video to get an idea on who's got the good matchups. All right, you guys got to make good decisions. Wide receiver here, let's rip through it here. Romeo Doubs coming off some safe weeks, got a tough matchup this week. Him, Lazard, they've got in tough versus Giants secondary. With Doubs, still a big question mark on who the wide receiver one is there. Dobbs has stepped up as the rookie. Watson finally got, I think, a touchdown last week, 9 points. Either way, like it's a crapshoot with these guys. Tunyon getting some work in. There hasn't been a guy that stepped up as the wide receiver one. Lazard getting work there last week, 21 points. It's tough, but either way, they've got it in tough this week, guys, versus position. Second hardest matchup versus position versus Giants secondary. Be aware. Jefferson coming off a monster week. We're going to see how he does against Chicago's secondary. Fourth hardest versus position, believe it or not. Adam Thielen, Jefferson, both been pretty solid the past couple weeks. Jefferson, not so good 2 weeks ago with a 4-point game, bouncing back in a big way with 34 points last week. Again, tough matchup versus position. Deontay Johnson, like I said, we talked about Pickett. Deontay Johnson playing Buffalo. Tough matchup versus position. Now, it's funny with Deontay. I don't know if you saw it on my, if you're not following on Insta, make sure you're following at Fantasy Football Counselor. I guess somebody tagged him. He's called the Juice something on Instagram. And what ends up happening is I click on the link. They tag Landry for some post, and I click on the Juice link. I go to a site. It says site profile not available. I'm like, what happened? Did Deontay Johnson cancel his Instagram? And then I found out he blocked me. And then I remembered, I think last year or the year before, I said that he sucked in a game and he blocked me. What a soft individual. And again, I have no stock in Deontay this year. I will never draft this guy yet again. I hope Pickens emerges here as the wide receiver 1, all right? I really hope he does. Pickett to Pickens, I hope, is a connection. I hope Deontay falls right off. Okay, I don't like that guy. Just to block me, like that's soft, dude. That's really soft. Not that I really care, but what I do care about is how soft these players are when they can't even take some simple criticism on them having a bad game. They should be ashamed of themselves. So anyway, they've got it in tough this week. We'll see how they, line up there with Kenny Pickett, how they do. DJ Moore has got it in tough this week versus, against San Fran secondary. So him, Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore coming off a 12-point week last week, got it in tough. And A.J. Brown, believe it or not, Devontae Smith, okay, 7th hardest matchup versus position against wide receivers. Something to be aware of, that Arizona's secondary plays wide receivers a little tougher. Devin Duvernay from Baltimore versus Cincinnati got it in tough. And Cooper Kupp versus Dallas, the secondary, 9th hardest matchup versus position. He's been red hot. 29 points last week, 16 the week before. Been absolutely red hot. And again, I take full ownership on this. Now, there's a lot of stuff I got right. Alec Pierce, no one was talking about him. He broke out last game, right? Getting a lot of targets, showing that he is a viable option. I kept telling everybody, stash Alec Pierce. The one Achilles heel here, whatever you want to call it, is Cooper Kupp. He's the guy that I said would decline. I said Taylor would decline. Taylor has declined, missing this week, right? Now, Cooper Kupp, and he's been playing like crap, Taylor. Cooper Kupp is the only guy that has really man, Joe was wrong on him. We'll see. I mean, it's still early in the season. I think he's going to fall off. We're going to see how that happens, all right? Drake London, 11th hardest matchup for position, be aware. And, those are the guys that have it in tough. So just to recap here, Drake London, Cooper Kupp versus Dallas, tough matchup. Devin Duvernay and the Baltimore receivers versus Cincy got it in tough. Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown. Do you sit them? No, you don't sit them, but they do have it in tough versus matchup. And it is like fantasy roulette. A.J. Brown Smith, who's it going to be this week? Like, who's going to emerge, right? Who's going to be the big point getter that week? DJ Moore again, Robbie Anderson, they've got it in tough here versus San Fran. Deontay and all of those guys, in Pittsburgh got it in tough versus Buffalo. Jefferson and squad have it tough versus Chicago secondary, believe it or not. And the Giants secondary, they play tough, man. The corners play tough, and they're playing Green Bay. So those are the guys that got in tough at wide receiver. But again, you guys got to make the executive decision. I'm not telling you to sit anybody. I'm just telling you that, if you got a better option, these guys have tough matchups. Again, it's hard. You don't sit Jefferson, right? You just don't, all right? Unless he goes like 5 consecutive weeks of doing nothing, and then you consider sitting him. Tight end position here. Let's go here. Dalton Schultz, I believe he's back. He's been playing like crap, obviously, because he's not on the field. Good enough reason, right? If he's not on the field. And I consider injury. I always say that. If you're not on the field and you're injured, you still suck because you're not performing. You're putting up 0 points. So there's really no excuse for you. So Javonte Williams, I suggested him. I said, grab him as part of a robust RB strategy, right? Grab Javonte as part of a robust RB strategy, but be aware that Melvin's going to be a pest. And sure enough, he was. I didn't project a catastrophic season-ending injury, but he's a bust. Javonte's a bust. So Dalton's been a bust the past couple weeks. So Dalton's got in tough. Be aware of that. Noah Fant, Seattle versus New Orleans, right? Noah Fant's got it in tough. Be aware of that. Again, Dalton Schultz playing the Rams secondary, so he's got it in tough. Tyler Higbee, who's been pretty solid. Again, similar to Cooper Kupp. Tough matchup versus position. 5th hardest versus position versus Higbee versus Dallas secondary. Dallas's tight end defense. Pat Freiermuth versus Buffalo's got in tough. 3rd hardest versus position. Robert Tonyan coming off a touchdown game. 7th hardest versus position. Gerald Everett, who's been consistent as they come. Tough matchup versus position. He already played. I'm looking at the wrong thing. Brevin Jordan, again, he's got in tough versus Jacksonville. So something to talk about here, guys, when you're looking at tight ends here. Gerald Everett, right? Tyler Higbee, all right? Pat Freiermuth, 16 points last week. Dalton Schultz, if he's playing this week, I think he is. So when you're looking at these guys, all right, tight ends are hard to come by. Even though these guys have tough matchups, you do not sit a tight end that's been consistent. And that's the biggest key when you're looking at starts and sits, right? You can say, hey, he's got a tough matchup. The only time you start someone else if you have a better option. Does that make sense to you? So let me give you a quick example here, right? When you're looking at the tight end position, Hawkinson, right? Let's say you have Hawkinson. He had a huge game last week, 43 points. He's actually got a really good matchup, right? Do you start Hawkinson or do you start Pat Freiermuth? I'm going to start Hawkinson, right? Do you start Hawkinson or do you start Everett? Hawkinson coming off a big week. There's a chance he's definitely going to regress, but he's got the easier matchup. You may want to consider starting Hawkinson if you have Hawkinson Everett, right? Does that make sense? Now, let's just say you have Everett. He's got the 8th hardest matchup versus position, and your other tight end is, let me pick here. Let's say, I'm trying to find Tyler Conklin, who's been also safe, right? Conklin, I may start Everett. I just feel like Herbert is going to do better. I don't know, just giving you an idea here, right? So you got to make a decision and say, hey, okay, based on matchup. Okay, Kyle Pitts, another example. Easy matchup versus position, been playing like crap. Everett's got a tough matchup. Who do you start? I may lean Everett here, right? But Kyle Pitts could break out this week. He's got an easier matchup, 4th easiest versus position. So, but I still probably lean Everett this week for the week. So the point I'm trying to make here, guys, is take a look at who you got. Take a look at the matchup, right? Okay. This guy's got a tougher matchup based on what Joe said, based on his 2 episodes here. I'm going to start the one with the better matchup, or I'm going to start the one that's been more consistent. Think, guys. Make educated decisions. Take a look at all variables, matchups, consistency, all those variables, and make sure you start the right person. All right, guys? Or in this case, sit the right person. But now you know who's got the tough matchups going into this week. Now, again, if you're new to the channel, make sure you guys are subscribed. FFC20 is the code for Hooters. Write that down, guys, as you're watching the games this week. And week 5 is here. I can't believe it. Week 5 is here. We are rolling through. It's funny because it takes so long for the season to get here. It drags on. When you're in it, it just flies by. All right, guys, so those are your sits here. And, yeah, go out there, dominate, make educated decisions, and drop some questions below. I'll try to get to some of your starts and sits. Or also, join the Patreon group, patreon.com/FFCounselor for direct access. That's it, guys. Good luck. Those are your sits. We'll talk soon.